I'm Mildred. Sitting in the courtroom, my hands are tightly clenched in my lap. The air is thick with tension as the evidence against my brother, Oscar, is presented. The pawn slips, bank records, and video footage lay bare his deceit. When the verdict of guilty on multiple counts of fraud and theft is read, I feel no sense of triumph. Instead, a strange mix of sorrow and release washes over me. The brother I once defended so fiercely is gone. Perhaps he was lost to me long before this day. My mind drifts back to a time when our world was so different. Our parents were strict yet loving. Father was a hard-working mechanic, always teaching us the value of honesty and hard work. Mother was a schoolteacher, gentle and patient, instilling in us a love for learning. We lived in a small town in Maine, a close-knit community where everyone knew each other. But our idyllic life was shattered when I was 7 and Oscar was 9. A fire broke out in our family home in the middle of the night. Our parents perished in the flames, and in an instant, we were orphaned. Overnight, we went from being children with a loving family to 2 lost souls in a world of strangers. Foster homes became our new reality. They came and went like the changing seasons. Sometimes we were together, finding comfort in each other's presence. Other times, we were separated, and those were the loneliest moments. Whenever I found myself in an unfamiliar bed or at a new school, I held on to the memory of Oscar's hand in mine at the fire station, promising me that everything would be okay. Oscar was always the more outgoing one. He was loud, a bit rough around the edges, and wasn't afraid to stand up for himself or for me. Even as a child, he had a rebellious streak. He would get into fights with other kids at school and would steal small things when he thought no one was watching. But to me, he was my protector, the only family I had left. I was the quiet, bookish one, content to lose myself in the pages of a book. As we grew older, I was determined to build a stable life. I enrolled in college, working part-time jobs at a local diner to pay my way through. I was on a path to a career in social work, hoping to help others who had gone through similar hardships. Oscar also tried to make something of himself. He enrolled in a trade school, talking about becoming an electrician. But his efforts didn't last long. He dropped out and started hopping from one odd job to another, always on the verge of getting into trouble. Yet, I always believed him when he said he would figure things out. I wanted to believe him because I had grown up thinking that my survival depended on his strength. One day, Oscar started showing signs of what I thought was illness. He would forget simple things, like where he put his keys, or repeat the same story over and over again. I chalked it up to stress, maybe even depression. I insisted that he go to the doctor, and that's when my world started to crumble. I was sitting in the waiting room of the local hospital, clutching my purse so tightly that my knuckles ached. The hum of the vending machines and the smell of antiseptic filled the air, making the place feel cold and suffocating. Oscar had been called in a few minutes earlier, his shoulders slumped and his steps unsteady. To anyone else, he looked like a sick man, but to me, he was my brother. I tried to distract myself by looking at an old magazine, but my mind kept going back to the past few weeks. The nights when he barely ate, the mornings when he seemed confused. I told myself that we could face this together. When the nurse tapped my shoulder and asked me to follow her, my heart sank. I thought I was going to help explain his symptoms or fill out some paperwork. Instead, she led me into a small office with a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. Dr. Amelia Reed was waiting for me. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. "Mildred," she began, her voice low and firm. "You need to protect yourself from Oscar." I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Protect myself from Oscar? She must have been mistaken. I opened my mouth to protest, but she raised her hand gently, stopping me. Her eyes told me that she was certain. My mind was thrown into a whirlwind of memories. I remembered all the times Oscar had made strange excuses at work, how he would exaggerate his aches and pains when bills were due. Dr. Reed then told me that she had treated Oscar in the ER a few years ago. He had come in with a deep cut on his arm after an altercation with a woman. Later, she found out that the woman was his ex-girlfriend, and she had accused him of stealing her jewelry and draining her bank account. He was charged with fraud, but he claimed he was sick and that his memory was failing. The evidence, however, told a different story. After that day at the hospital, I tried to push Dr. Reed's warning to the back of my mind. But as the days passed, Oscar's behavior got worse. He started missing shifts at his job at the warehouse. I offered to help him get back on his feet, paying his rent and covering his phone bill. I still believed that this was just an illness and that he would get better. One Friday, I went to the bank to withdraw money for groceries. The screen showed a balance much lower than it should have been. Confused, I logged into my online account later that night. There were several withdrawals from different ATMs across town, and I had never made them. Then, I noticed that some of my things were missing, my laptop and a locket that my mother had given me. At first, I thought I had misplaced them, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Every time I looked at Oscar, slumped on the couch, complaining about headaches and dizziness, the seed of suspicion grew in me. But I couldn't bring myself to believe that he was stealing from me. I kept telling myself that he was sick and that I was overreacting. A week after the hospital visit, Dr. Reed called me and asked me to come in alone. Sitting in her office again, I felt a knot in my chest. She leaned forward and said, "Mildred, I didn't want to overwhelm you that day, but you need to know the whole truth. Oscar has a pattern of this kind of behavior. Be careful." I left her office feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath me. I started to see all of Oscar's symptoms in a new light. Maybe they were all an act. That's when I decided to order a set of small security cameras online. It felt like something out of a cheap detective movie, but I was desperate for answers. I placed the cameras in places where Oscar wouldn't notice, one above the front door, one between the books on the living room shelf, and another pointed at the hallway leading to my bedroom. For the first few nights, the recordings were uneventful. Oscar just sat on the couch, barely moving. I almost thought I had made a mistake. But on the fourth night, the footage shattered my illusions. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Oscar got up from the couch with steady legs. He walked quickly to my bedroom, slipped inside, and came out with the locket. My heart was pounding as I watched him put it in his pocket and then leave the apartment. The camera at the door caught him returning just before dawn, empty-handed, with a smug look on his face. A few nights later, the same thing happened with my laptop. He carried it out under his arm, walking confidently. I sat there, frozen in front of the playback, feeling sick to my stomach. The man I had defended for so long was a thief. That evening, when Oscar came home and slumped on the couch, muttering about dizziness, I couldn't look at him the same way. I waited until I had enough courage to confront him. Standing in the doorway of the living room, I held the camera remote in my hand. "I know what you've been doing," I said, my voice trembling but steady. He opened his eyes slowly and asked, "What are you talking about?" I told him about the cameras, the pawn shop trips, and how he walked fine when he thought I wasn't looking. He sat up, shaking his head and laughing bitterly. "I'm sick, Mildred. You're spying on me. How could you be so cruel?" His voice cracked in all the right places, but I could see through his act. I told him that he had been lying to me all along. He reached out, trying to pull me back into the role of the loyal sister. "I'm all you have, Mildred. Don't turn on me." But I jerked away. My heart was breaking, but I knew I had to protect myself. After he stormed off to his room, I collapsed at the kitchen table. The weight of love and betrayal was almost too much to bear. But in the midst of my grief, I found the strength to take action. I called my friend Ethan, the only person I trusted outside of Oscar. He came over with his laptop and a notepad. I showed him the footage, the bank statements, and the pawn shop receipts I had managed to find. Ethan listened quietly, taking notes. Finally, he looked up and said, "Mildred, this is fraud. If you don't do something, he'll keep doing it, to you or to someone else. His words cut through my guilt. Together, we organized all the evidence and drove downtown to the police station. Inside, we met Detective Harris. At first, he was skeptical, but as Ethan showed him the footage, his expression changed. We've had reports like this before, but there wasn't enough evidence. This time, it might be different, he said. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, 2 uniformed officers stood there. I stepped aside as they entered the apartment. Oscar was on the couch, pretending to be sick. When he saw the officers, he sat up quickly. "Oscar Thompson, you're under arrest for fraud and theft," one of the officers said firmly. Oscar looked at me, his eyes wide. "Mildred, tell them I'm sick," he stammered. I took a deep breath and said, "I gave them the proof. I know what you did." He tried to twist the story, saying that depression had made him do it, but the evidence was too strong. As the officers led him out of the apartment, he turned to look at me one last time, searching for the sister who used to defend him. But I stood there, unmoving. The door closed behind them, and the apartment was filled with a heavy silence. I sank into a chair, shaking from the shock of what had just happened. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying his burden anymore. But relief was mixed with grief, and I wasn't sure which feeling would last longer. Months passed in a blur of court hearings and paperwork. Oscar was in county jail, awaiting trial. I still felt his presence in every corner of my life. Some mornings, I would wake up expecting to hear his footsteps in the kitchen. Other nights, I would lie awake, wondering if I had done the right thing. To keep myself together, I threw myself into my social work. I volunteered at a local foster youth program, sitting with kids who had gone through similar traumas. Listening to their stories and helping them with their homework gave me a sense of purpose. Ethan was there for me throughout it all. He would check on me, leaving notes of encouragement under my door or a cup of coffee on my desk. His quiet presence was a reminder that not everyone used trust as a weapon. One evening, after a long day at the center, Ethan walked me to my car. He asked me, almost shyly, if I would like to have dinner with him. There was no pressure in his voice, just a sincere offer. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to guard myself. I felt ready. As I drove home that night, I realized something I should have known all along. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stay, who honor, trust, and support you. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight finally lift off my shoulders, and stepped into a new chapter of my life, a life that was truly my own.